Blade and Sorcery Nomad, the full release, has finally arrived. Yeah! I spent the last week trying Nomad out so I could give you the best and worst parts of this port. I'll be completely honest with you guys, it's nearly perfect. People wanted to play the full release of Blade and Sorcery PC VR on their Quest headset, and now they actually can. Now I do want to start this video off with the 4 issues I encountered while playing, but before I do, I just want to mention to you guys, if you want a discount on Blade and Sorcery Nomad, feel free to get that with the link in the description. Okay, so my first problem was the lag. While the frame rate was nearly perfect the entire playthrough, every time a map or a room with water loaded, or whenever attempting to load into a golem boss room, there was a lag spike for about 1 to 2 seconds. In an hour, it happened around 3 to 4 times, but for the sheer size of the game, I'm honestly not bothered by it in the slightest. It also makes sense when you think about it. Trying to play Blade and Sorcery on a standalone headset would definitely have limitations, but overall the frame rate was steady, so this didn't interrupt gameplay at all. I can say the lag spikes only happened when loading, never during combat or during an event that could have been disrupted by it, so in my book, that's a huge win. Lag, even in PC VR, is inevitable. The second problem I had with the game were the physics limitations. This definitely is in PC VR in that regard. I'm specifically talking about my hands, clipping through items and walls, as well as some problems fighting enemies. You can 100% beat the game regardless of a few of these problems, but for me it was a bit annoying when I would sneak up behind an enemy and try to stab them ahead in a cool way, only for the sword to bounce off, or when trying to stab enemies in the chest with a sword, it would make the sound and decals in the right spot, but weirdly enough the sword phases through the enemies and ends up at their side. I want to make sure to say this wasn't a common physics problem, but it did happen 2 or 3 times out of every 100 or so enemies I fought. The hand clipping problem is something that we face even in PC VR, so while it isn't a huge issue, it can definitely be a bit annoying trying to grab a ledge or a weapon for your hand to just clip and get stuck in it for the next 2 or 3 seconds. I know that definitely happened to me quite a bit more in Nomad than PC VR, but like I said, it wasn't really a big problem. It didn't happen enough to really be that much of an issue. My third problem was the graphics. I know, this is a port from PC VR to the Quest. There's bound to be graphics limitations. I completely understand that, but it doesn't change the fact that while looking into the distance did give me a bit of a migraine after only playing for an hour. That definitely wasn't fun. Overall, the fact that they did manage to port everything over without sacrificing content is a huge win, but I honestly wish some things were able to be sacrificed in order to make graphics a bit better. Maybe I'm a little bit spoiled after having played the new Batman Arkham Shadow game on my Quest 3, and yeah, I know they're completely different games with physics, calculations, combat, and everything in between, but that game looks stunning. Switching from covering that in my last video compared to Blade and Sorcery Nomad was kind of a letdown. To speak only about Blade and Sorcery Nomad compared to PC VR though, graphics are there, it's just when there's anything further than 5 feet, regardless of whether that's trees, rocks, weapons, enemies, whatever, it just starts getting pixely and blurry. I get that there's limitations, and it's not really something you can avoid, but it's just unfortunate. Fourth, and the least important of my issues, I don't know if it's just me, but when in Nomad, the haptic feedback or controller vibrations when interacting with the environment just feels diminished compared to PC VR. I've punched enemies, grabbed items and walls, but it's less forceful. Granted, it's not a huge deal or even a problem at all, but it's something that I noticed that I didn't enjoy. I know for me, when I go and I fight enemies, when I grab weapons, when I use abilities, I want to really feel like I'm actually doing them. I want to feel the vibrations in my controllers going crazy. I want to make sure that when I hit something, my hand vibrates and I can tell, oh wow, I just hit something. Because at the end of the day, we're still in virtual reality. We're trying to make this as close to quote-unquote real life as we possibly can, right? I mean, maybe that's just my opinion, but I still wish, or I still at least noticed, that the haptic feedback does not seem to be as it was in PC VR. Not exactly sure if that's something that they can fix, but I didn't expect that to be something that I noticed while trying out this Nomad port. But in any event, it really wasn't that big of a problem, just something I noticed. Okay, now let's get into everything that I did enjoy about Nomad. First, and the most obvious point, it's literally a 1-to-1 point of Blade and Sorcery PC VR, except for frames and graphics. Now, it was completely awesome being able to play the entire game from my headset standalone without needing internet connection. Combat was fun, sounds are good, and it has all the weapons and ability perfectly ported over. I can highly recommend this game for anybody without a PC without a problem. Over 70 different weapons, over 70 different abilities and spells, and deserves to be one of the most downloaded VR games ever. I was a bit skeptical when hearing that the team managed to put over all the weapons and abilities without many issues, but I'm happy to say you're all in for a treat. The weapons look exactly the same as PC VR and work just the same. All the spells and abilities look great, even with the slightly decreased particle effects too. I was especially worried about the new overpowered merge abilities like the Kamehameha beam, the fire lightning beam, the black hole, the gravity tornadoes, but even those not only look fantastic but work the exact same as PC VR. It was also a lot of fun to see Baron in the shop again. I highly recommend you guys visiting him often so you get to upgrade your gear and be able to destroy Hector the Golem without any problems. He can definitely be a bit tough at times, but I know in one of my first fights against him in Nomad, I did end up dying quite a few times, so I'd highly recommend you guys upgrade your gear as soon as possible. Overall, I won't be trading PC VR for Nomad anytime soon. But for all of you that can only play Nomad, and obviously don't have a PC, it's clear as day that the Warp Frog team worked incredibly hard in order to make this as close to PC VR as possible. Even if I wasn't to compare Nomad to PC VR, by itself, it's a fantastic game. But with that being said, here's my first minute trying out Blade and Sorcery Nomad, the new Crystal Hunt story mode. And just keep in mind guys, a full video showcasing my first playthrough up until beating Hector the Golem boss will be coming out shortly, so stay tuned for that. Without further ado, let's begin. I guess we're just going to go through our tutorial and see how everything lines up with the PC VR version. It's supposed to be as close to a one-to-one port as possible, so I'm excited. Oh yeah, I know about telekinesis, you don't have to tell me twice. Alright, handles looking good, everything's good, movement's perfectly fine. Honestly, my frames are doing excellent right now. Granted, we haven't done a heck of a lot, but the water is absolutely beautiful. It looks way closer to PC VR now. Super psyched about that. We got this guy right here. Hey man, how's it going? Alright, let's keep going. So, head up here. Everything physical forces. Oh, okay. Why don't we try some combat? Hey, pal. Let's see. He can move around just fine. We can block attacks. Oh, I'm not getting any lag at all. Huh. Well, at the very least, one enemy fighting in this new version is pretty cool. Not half bad. Although, I wish there was a little bit more force, like vibration in the controller when you block attacks. And, when you hit enemies and do things like that. Other than that, I'm actually very happy with how this is working out. Pathfinding for the enemies is just fine. They can walk up and down slopes, no problem. But I believe that's everything I wanted to say to you guys, so I'll remind you that there's a discount link in the description if you guys want to get Blade and Sorcery Nomad cheaper. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. Thanks for watching.